Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I would like to present a research that is based here in Luxembourg, and it's about around the concept of eco-anxiety. I don't know, do you know what is the concept of eco-anxiety? Have you ever heard about that? Yeah. Who has eco-anxiety? Okay. Eco-anxiety basically is the anxiety that people has when they think about all the problems that surround the climate change. So given that you are subjective well-being or happiness researchers, I would like to ask you, do you have eco-anxiety, or do you think that you can have eco-anxiety? Yes, all right. So in this research, we ask two main questions. The first is how eco-anxiety relates with youth subjective well-being, and does this relationship matter beyond objective individual conditions? And second is how this relationship is moderated by the proximity to extreme weather events. So you may think why this is important. Well, first of all, because Luxembourg, even if you don't believe it, is one of the happiest countries in the world. Actually, now in the World Happiness Report, I think it is number 9 or number 7. Yes. And also it's the richest country in the world, you know, and at the same time, it also has the worst ecological footprint in the world, you know. So it's like a kind of extreme case study. And well, yeah, together with Qatar, yes. Yes, Luxembourg and Qatar, yes. And we thought that this is a very interesting relationship to study, because eco-anxiety was considered the biggest pop cultural trend in 2019. And we thought that it could be interesting to explore this relationship in this context with the youth population. Because among other things, there is a lack of studies that try to analyze how eco-anxiety relates indeed with subjective well-being outcomes. So how we did it? Well, first we did with two conceptions: the main dimensions of subjective well-being, one that was the affective or hedonic one, that is the happiness, and the other is more cognitive, is more evaluative, that is the life satisfaction, as you know. It was interesting because, yes, it's a cross-sectional data, so it's maybe crap, but no. I mean, it's not panel data, so we cannot control for heterogeneous fixed effects. It's true, and it's only a cross-sectional only of 2 waves. But there is something interesting about that it's one of the first times that they ask about a question that we could operationalize as eco-anxiety. And second, this is the most interesting part, when they start to do this questionnaire, there were the 2001 European floods. I don't know if you remember, those who you were here in Luxembourg 2 years ago, that there was a very strong flooding. So for us, it's like, okay, let's see what's going on. We have these questions on subjective well-being, on eco-anxiety, and we have this kind of treatment that can be considered a kind of natural experimental setting, because it was before, during, and after the flooding. So just to be sure that you understand what we are really measuring, first, the hypothesis is that eco-anxiety will matter for subjective well-being between individual characteristics. We couldn't decide which was going to be the direction of the relationship, because even if a priori we will expect eco-anxiety, it will have a negative relationships with subjective well-being, there are a lot of studies that maybe suggest that this can mean something else, like self-green image or other related concepts. So we could only expect that there was a strong relationship, but not which kind of relationship. And also, we were also expecting that after experiencing a flood, in your own country, especially in Luxembourg, that is very small, it's not like Germany or France, wow, this relationship will become stronger. So the people that is more eco-anxious, wow, they will see that, wow, look, this flooding is just one example of the climate change effects that the step by step are going to be more and more common. And then, the second hypothesis was that this relationship between eco-anxiety and subjective well-being will become stronger after the flooding. And then that another issue that is also important is like, okay, maybe I experience a flooding in my country, but I don't physically experience it. So we also wanted to test for that and to see that if you have a direct impact, what's the outcome? And I think that this was, as I said, very interesting because it was in this extreme case study of Luxembourg. So just for you to be sure what are we really measuring, affective subjective well-being or happiness was captured by the question in the last 2 weeks only. I was happy and in a good mood, from 1 to 6. And the life satisfaction, the cognitive dimension, by the usual life satisfaction that is between 0 and 10. What is the level of satisfaction, meaning that the 10 is the best possible life for you and 0 is the worst. Also, eco-anxiety, that is maybe I think that it's the most critical question here. It's this question. It worries me when I think about the environmental conditions in which our children and grandchildren will probably have to live. And the young people have to answer between 1 and 5. Well, there is not a lot of variability in the answer, but still give us some room. That it's between 1 and 5, between strongly disagree and strongly agree. So what are the results? And the flooding, basically, sorry for that, I forgot to say that. We did basically a dummy variable that is before the flooding and after the flooding. And the flooding were basically on the 14th of July of 2021 was basically that day, the day of the flooding, the day of the flooding. So we did this dummy variable. And then for the proximity variable, we look at the 102 municipalities of Luxembourg. So we did also another dummy for those municipalities that were affected with those that were not affected. It was around the 70 municipalities that were strongly affected and others than not. So and then in individual controls, of course, gender, age squared, subjective family wealth, and dummy if you were very sick in terms of health. So this is the table 1, but I'm going to skip it, knowing that we are short of time. So what are the main results? Actually, here we found very interesting results. I know that it's a cross-sectional sample, but I think that it's interesting. First is that eco-anxiety relates positively with affective happiness. I mean, the side effects are not very huge, but still, it's quite interesting, that it relates positively with subjective well-being, but is not related with life satisfaction. I know that we have a tendency to only publish the results that are significant or very significant with huge side effects, but we thought that, it's quite interesting. So maybe you can give me feedback about which other controls maybe we can have, which other strategies for robustness checks we can do, or which explanations for these results can be. But for us, this was the first interesting result. The second is that the flooding impact positively, in a positive way, the well-being of the young people. It's true that it's not significant. This is significant at 10%, but this can be explained maybe because when there is a huge flooding or a natural disaster, people tend to be more there is a boost on solidarity, so it affects people more positively somehow, especially knowing that it's young people. So maybe it's people, and in Luxembourg, so it's not people that lost the house or something very big. And then the other interesting result is that the interaction between eco-anxiety and the flooding is not significant. So it didn't change this relationship. We were expecting that it's going to really, be very significant, and it's not. Also, when we did the triple interaction with proximity, so if you physically experience this flood, also was not significant. It's significant at 10%, which some people may think that it's significant, but well, we thought that probably no, we could not consider, but of course we wanted to show you. But it's interesting for us, no, that even when you physically experience a flooding, this relationship doesn't change, no, and basically that that eco-anxiety seems to only relate in a positive way with affective subjective well-being, with happiness, but not with life satisfaction. So maybe now you can help us. By the way, I'm doing this research, forgot about that, with Robin Samuel and with Hamid Bulut, that is a PhD student at the University of Luxembourg, and with Robin Samuel, that is also the head of the youth division here at the University of Luxembourg. So maybe you can help us to maybe interpret these results. But maybe we thought, and also this is related, you know, to what Martin was saying this morning, or what Stefano will probably talk about, and even maybe related to what Francis also was talking about, that the fact that eco-anxiety is only related in a positive way with affective happiness, but not with life satisfaction. It's a way to say, okay, people just care in a superficial way about eco-anxiety. So I like to be seen as that I am green, you know. It's like it's a way to be socially accepted, you know. But when it comes to really do deep, strong action, strong changes in my daily that maybe it can mean that I have to change my daily conditions of comfort, then I really don't want to do that, you know. So we thought that well, it's at least an interesting result, and that well, it's the first time that we present that, so we are not sure exactly if maybe you can help us, you know, to maybe do with some ideas about which other robustness checks you think that we could do, or other explanations for these results, or if you think that this research maybe it's not worth it, so it's not even worth it that we try to publish it. So you can be honest, but given that this conference was in Luxembourg, and this is research on Luxembourg in a concept that is, I think, that is now is very relevant, that is the climate change, we thought that the list was interesting to present it. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so first on the significant association with happiness but not life satisfaction, that doesn't surprise me, just because we know that different measures of subjective well-being are capturing different like aspects of the life experience, right? So that happiness is this like positive affect, like that it's more of this sort of point in time measure, so that's not necessarily surprising to me. But kind of related to that, I'm wondering, do you have data on if the people in the sample have children? And I'm asking because you had 16 to 29, which is like, you know, your chances of like being a parent maybe increases a lot as you get older. And I'm thinking that the impact of your economic anxiety on your overall evaluation of your life might really change if you have children, especially given how that question was asked about like your children, your grandchildren. These are like, you get older, these aren't hypothetical children, these are like literal children, right? So the way you're thinking about it might be different. So I'm just wondering. Exactly. And that's where I'm wondering if you have that data, or if you like looked at that to see just like what might be going on with the age piece there and potentially parenthood. And then I had a question about how you're measuring affectedness by the flood. I know you had talked about it being like affectedness by the flood, because that was how you were considering your proximity. And so you talked about a 0-1.
Yeah, it's a variable between the municipalities that were affected by the flood, that there are records, and the ones that not.
Okay, so there's just some sort of record that's just like we were affected.
Yes,
not.
Yes,
okay.
yes. There is a kind of threshold that we could agree that it was affected or not. Yes. Thank you. Very nice.
I just have a question about your strategy. Maybe I've missed it, but so did you use a difference in difference?
No.
Okay, because maybe it would be interesting to see in this case, the flood gives you a kind of natural experiment. So you can compare the eco anxiety before and after the flood. You even have those municipalities that were not affected. So you have a treatment and a control group. So maybe it could be a strategy to implement.
Hey, thanks. I know you've been joking when you call cross sections crap, but I just want to say I think we can learn a lot from cross sections. What I try to convey is that basing policy advice on that might be a bit iffy if the causal identification is not right. You can get good causal identification with cross section. But now that aside, I think it's really interesting, and I would have one question and one suggestion. The suggestion maybe first in terms of you're having non-significant results. We're having this unfortunate bias against publishing that, and a way around that might for you to be considering doing an equivalence test. Daniel Lakens has published a very, very good article in one of those psychology journals about that, has also a blog post on that. It's a way around, it's basically a frequentist way of testing in a way that you can then say the effect is not significantly big enough. It is out of bounds of that what we're looking for to actually be relevant. That might be a nifty way of turning non-significant because the effect might be too small around if you have a good theoretical intuition about that. So it might be worth looking into. The other thing is a question about the eco-anxiety, and I know there's a huge literature on environmental concern, and that has affective and cognitive components. And this huge literature is also having questions that have something like, I worry about the environment. And now you've shown the eco-anxiety question I'm worried about. So my question is, how does that differ? Is it the same? Has that been validated? Is this a fancier name for something that environmental economists have been using for a long time, or where's the difference? Thanks.
Yeah, no, I want to collect more because I agree, and I am trying to. I think it's better that I get feedback now than to answer. So really, and.
Just have a comment on floods, because I remember that period, and in Echternacht, for instance, it was really bad, but it was even worse across the bridge from Echternacht. So it might also depend how you compare the area where you are with the area which is just next to you, where the houses were completely covered and destroyed. So it might also have an effect on, or help you to explain the results of flooding.
So even in the same municipality, you mean?
Yeah, my point is just a follow on from that. Do you have access to flood maps of the area that was actually affected?
Yeah, we use the some webpage of the ministry where they really signal which places were really.
And can you delve down in the data then to separate out, say, a municipality that some area was affected but others weren't? Okay. So
exactly.
Quite...
Exactly.
Okay,
that's how we finally make this division between the ones that were affected and not. I didn't show it because I thought that maybe it was not necessary, but yeah. Thank you.
The possible explanation for your finding that flooding doesn't affect subjective well-being, or even positively correlated to that, is the epidemic of solidarity and cooperation that usually natural disaster unchain in Europe. At least in Europe. I mean, in the US, when there was the Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, people climbed on the top of the roof bringing weapons. But in Europe, usually something very different happens. Your finding reminds me the last World Happiness Report, which tries to explain why the pandemic did not have the expected negative impact on subjective well-being. And they explain this exactly with an epidemic of solidarity and cooperation. And the question is there a way you can control for this in your data?
That's a good question. Now I don't think so, but yeah, maybe there is a way. I will double check that.
Stefano, nice question, but then I wonder why it doesn't find the effect on life satisfaction. But okay, just something this. A bit following on previous comments, I think there can be a sort of peer effect here. That is, you're in crap, but also all those around you are in crap, and this makes you feel less bad. I would also be interested in seeing a bit of heterogeneity analysis in your sample because, you know, can sound like a joke, but it's possible that some of the kids were just happy not to go to school.
Like 16, 29.
Exactly, but then imagine that the 16 for some reasons can be pushing the results.
Yeah.
Then I'm somehow grouping your observations in a way that pushes the result.
We did that for two kinds of we divided, and still the nature of results were the same. So from 16 to 21, I think, and then from 22 to 29.
Okay, and then
but more.
The other concern that I may have is about self-selection in your sample. So it would be nice to know in which language you administered the survey and how you administered the survey. Was it a web panel? Or
was in 5 languages.
Okay.
Was in the 5 languages of Luxembourg, and actually it was very strong. So they even put you a fine if you didn't want to participate. Yeah. I was a bit shocked to know that. But it's a very good influence. Yeah.
Am I right in remembering that the happiness question was based on happiness in the last fortnight? So the last 2 weeks. So I wonder whether you needed to lag it, because if you're using it when the date of the flood happened and you're asking to reflect on the 2 weeks before the flood happened, they'll be like, well, life was all right then. So whether you needed to lag it from 2 weeks after the flood date and see if you have any differencing. So you've got a whole period that they're reflecting back post-flood.
Yeah. No, totally true. I'm not sure that we control for that in these questions in the people that answer just 2 weeks after the flood. So fantastic comment. Well, and all the comments, I have a lot of comments. So thank you very much.